Okay, good morning everyone, and thank you for joining us here today. My name's Rachel Maitland and I'm the Education Coordinator here at Sydney Olympic Park Authority. So welcome to the Armoury Theatre and to the 2014 Youth Eco Summit. In the theatre with us today we have Grace Danes High School, and also a big shout out to those students who are joining us via the live feed on YouTube. Today you'll get to see the hard work and dedication that the students from Coomealla High School have prepared for us to put into their World Parks Congress Fuse project. I'd now like to hand over to Dan Nichols from the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service, who'll explain a bit more about the project and also introduce the students.
Thanks, Rachel. This project Fuse has been designed or developed by the New South Wales National Parks and Wildlife Service to link secondary school students in New South Wales with a major conservation event occurring just in a few weeks' time here at Sydney Olympic Park, the World Parks Congress. Just once every 10 years, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, puts on this World Parks Congress. The Congress brings together park managers, conservation agencies and organisations, research scientists, rangers, park managers, to discuss, debate and set the agenda for conservation management for the 10 years ahead. In line with Stream 8 of the Congress, Inspiring a New Generation, this project is designed to fulfil one of the aims of Stream 8, which is to have the voice of young people participate in the Congress and to be heard at the Congress. Stream 7 of the Congress, Respecting Indigenous and Traditional Knowledge and Culture, is the stream that Coomealla High School have been investigating. In 2010, the Convention on Biological Diversity set conservation targets aimed at increasing the involvement by Indigenous peoples around the world in protected area management. In Australia, understanding the rich culture of the Aboriginal peoples of the land continues to grow. For some, understanding the diverse and complex past management of the land by Aboriginal peoples is the next great challenge. Students from Coomealla High School have been investigating how greater participation by Aboriginal people in land management using traditional knowledge could positively enhance, change or expand conservation outcomes for threatened species. I'd like to introduce Tyler and Zach to detail their research and talk about their inspiring solution. Round of applause, please.
Hi, my name is Zach, this is Tyler. We would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which we meet and pay our respects to elders both past and present. We live in the far south-west corner of New South Wales, not that far from where the two longest rivers on our incredible continent meet. Our nearest high school is 300 kilometres away in Broken Hill or Hay. Our environment is a semi-arid. Its vegetation is made up of river red gums, box trees, bella and mallee eucalyptus, which are classified as mallee dune woodlands. This rich area of biodiversity is home to a large number of species which are listed in New South Wales as vulnerable, endangered or critically endangered. These mallee woodlands extend into Victoria to include the Hattah Lakes area and into southeast Australia as the Murray River makes its way to the Bight. The area also includes Coomealla Sanctuary that is protecting one of the largest areas of intact Murray woodlands in Australia. Coomealla is free of foxes and other introduced species. The Willandra Lakes World Heritage Area, which includes Lake Mungo, is also part of our area. It was a meeting place and sacred site for three tribe groups of Barkinji, Nipai and Muta. With an average rainfall of around 180 millimetres and around 77 days per year that exceeds 30 degrees, we have top temperatures that regularly exceed 40 degrees, which means this area is constantly under threat of fire that will cause enormous damage to both vegetation and wildlife. Recent wildfire across the border in South Australia has potentially caused the Mallee emu wren to now thought to be extinct in South Australia. Wildfire in Hatta National Park of Victoria saw death of around 40 Mallee fowl. After that brief introduction, we would like to pick up with the Fuse 7 STEAM project respecting Indigenous and traditional knowledge and culture. Aboriginal people have been part of this landscape for well over 40,000 years, living with the environment and manipulating it to allow their people to maintain a healthy environment around them. There is no doubt that Aboriginal people would have experience with wildfire brought about by lightning strikes, and it is obvious that they would also have sought to reduce the impact of their communities by conducting planned burns. However, their planning doesn't always match the current practices we see today. Fire stick farming, as it was dubbed by Rhys Jones in Bill Gamage's book The Greatest Estate on Earth, draws together the observation of the European travellers such as Eyre, Lake and Mitchell,
who saw grass burnt in mosaics to reduce fuel and to bring on green pick to lure grazing animals. These animals also require shelter, and it was with this in mind that Aboriginal people created their patterns or templates to ensure their food supply was not compromised. Often these patterns took long periods of time, even centuries, to set up due to the length of time eucalypts take to develop. A mosaic pattern of burning was practiced in desert regions in winter. Parts of the area were burnt. In spinifex grasslands, the spinifex was burnt and cleared land colonised by other desert plants that provide more food than areas dominated by spinifex. One of the plant species that replaces spinifex under these conditions is the wild tomato. These are the most important fruits of the desert people. They are very nutritious and are high in vitamin C, and they remain edible for long periods on the plant. Another plant that replaces the spinifex is the wild banana. Its leaves, fruit and roots are all edible. Small, cool, controlled fires at appropriate times served to reduce fuel on the ground below the eucalypt and promote grasses, as well as enable germination of wattles that provide food for a range of bird life, including the mallee fowl. Mosaic patterns maintain the materials which the mallee fowl require for nesting while reduce the risk to these very unique birds.
So what is traditional around fire stick farming? Speaking to Ron Jackson about these techniques, he gives us the following information. Fire stick farming has to be controlled in order to be effective. This means an ability to be able to forecast seasonal weather changes, much of which is based on observations of what is happening around them, how ants and other animals behaved when changes were on their way. This study of the environment is necessary by the ongoing way of life. Studies of plants and animals in this foundation of a very healthy and productive life, regardless of where the environments are. It can be used to herd animals together and drive them through prescribed gates, making hunting all that much easier. It can also be used to promote new growth and remove unwanted plants or materials, allowing productive plants to germinate and flourish. There was a need to have extreme and correct knowledge of where sacred sites are, with the need to maintain these sites. The role of different members of the community were clearly defined in both men and women having expertise and responsibility for taking care of one of the animals and plants. Aboriginal people were very good conservationists. Fire stick farming was supervised by the men who had sufficient knowledge and understanding and experience, and in getting it right the first time every time. Lives and lifestyle depended on this. Timing was most important when burning. Not only was fire used to clean up rubbish and mulch from the ground, it also burnt the protective covers off some seeds in order for them to get germinated. Some seeds had time limits on the amount of time they could lay amongst the mulch, dried bark and grass that covered them. The environment had an endless supply of food, as well as materials that they could be used for implements and utensils. To supplement this, there was a national and international trade that was necessary to enable science and technology among tribal groups and processes. All animals and plants and people had a special purpose for being on their homelands, with the people being caretakers of the environment in which they live. It was well known that fire stick farming could be a dangerous thing to animals and plants, and people even, which meant approximate precautions must be followed by necessity. Precautions such as not burning during spring, as this was time for new growth, nor burning when bark was dry and hanging from strips down from the mallee, for this would surely lead to the reaching of the canopy and the trees would then die. Nor was burning when food was present in that particular area. Traditional laws and law was put in place to guarantee that all were catered for in the natural state, with all animals and plants having a special place and tradition among Aboriginal life and well-being. Living in this environment took correct forecast and calculating of the future for a healthy lifestyle and safe and productive environments for all to be well. Aboriginal religious philosophy explains the enforced this management of land, chiefly via totems. All things were responsible for the others of its totem and their habitats. For example, emu people must care for emus and emu habitats, and emus must care for them. There was, to a lesser but still strong responsibility to the other totems and habitats, ensuring that all things were always under care. The animal totems of the community thrived through each other, through each area and of community and language groups being a sanctuary for them. Totems underwrote the ecological arrangement of Australia, creating an entire continent managed under the same law of similar biodiverse purposes no matter what vegetation.
So what are current practices? Ray Damon of National Parks tells us that current practices of fire management are based around trying to avoid large-scale wildfire, burning large areas of our reserves in single events. This is done in a number of ways, but primarily through a network of fire trails which allow vehicle access and the prescribed burning strips that are 100 to 300 metres wide in areas of high fuel loads adjacent to those fire trails. The most of high fuel load areas are primarily composed of spinifex as the ground fuel. Prescribed burning is done in order to disrupt areas of continuous fuel and may break up approaching wildfire, creating refuge, or in some moderately intense fires stop them at the break. He notes that in extreme fire weather conditions it is very difficult to stop wildfire in mallee environments during daylight hours. Ray goes on to tell us that in reserves that are single fire age class, for example, the age of the vegetation is the same, 30 years without being burnt. Larger block burns have been conducted to create a mosaic of ages within the reserve. This provides protection as wildfire will not burn mallee areas which are less than 15 years old. Ray sums it up current practice by noting the aim is to generally protect old growth mallee while recognising some may need to be burnt to provide a mosaic effect and promote the overall habitat diversity that all fire age classes can provide. The overall aim of our fire management is to protect life and property, protect our reserves from being consumed in a single wildfire event, promote patchiness of wildfire by creating a mosaic of vegetation age classes. At Scotia Sanctuary, fire management has the following core objectives: protecting human life and assets including infrastructure and the feral-proof fence, maintaining long unburnt old growth mallee and creating refuge areas for animals thought the implementation precipitation of cool prescribed burns across the landscape. Wildfires in the Mallee can be very extensive. They will burn intensely and are difficult to contain, especially in high temperatures and strong winds. The highest risk periods are typically in the years following above average rainfall. Scotia Sanctuary carries out ground-based planned burning during the cooler months, July to September. Their overall aim is for 10% of the property to be burnt in any 10-year period. Areas inside the feral-free area are burnt to provide refuge, areas with lower fuel if a wildfire does occur.
So where to from here? It is now more important than ever to identify and implement fire management practices that provide a capacity to protect our fragile and complex environment. By consulting with Aboriginal people who have knowledge of the country, we can surely implement controlled cool burns to create a mosaic of different fire ages classes across our reserves, which are at the approximate times to allow the health of our environment. With only 15% of our June Mallee woodlands remaining, now is the time to act. I think Bill Gamage, in his book, The Biggest Estate on Earth, sums it up beautifully when he says, "Today, admit the wreck of what Aboriginals made, their remaining relics of their management. They depended not on chance but on policy. They shaped Australia to ensure community, balance, abundance and predictability. All now are in doubt. In the face of such doubt, so basic and so sweeping, can we now really say we're managing our country? Can we really say we are Australian?"
As we went about our researching of our information, we looked more and more at how these change fire practices affect our wildlife. With so much wildlife considered vulnerable, threatened or critically threatened within our local area, it was difficult to just pick one. After careful thought, we selected a bird which truly is amazing, a bird which spends the majority of its time on the ground working tirelessly for 9 months to prepare its nesting place, and yet has very little to do with the chicks once they hatch. The bird we are talking about is the Mallee fowl. Australia has 3 species of megapods: the Australian brush turkey, the Mallee fowl and the orange-footed scrub fowl. Of these, the Mallee fowl is the most endangered and the only one which lives in arid regions. Some facts: the Mallee fowl grows to 55 to 60 centimetres, has a weight up to 2.5 kilos and is a large bird. Its head and neck are buff grey, while its body is dappled brown, black and white. It has very keen hearing and eyesight. This allows it to detect dangers well in advance. If threatened, it will sneak away, relying on its camouflage. The Mallee fowl is a strong flyer but prefers to run at a fast, lumbering pace if startled. It does seek safety in the canopy of the eucalypts when necessary, often at night to protect itself from foxes. When most animals are sheltering from the blazing heat, the Mallee fowl is busy moving tons of sand and debris to maintain a nest mound in which the female lays her eggs.
Mallee fowl nests can be over 1 metre in height and 4 metres in diameter. The male buries wet leaf litter in the mound, which gives off heat as it rots, acting as a natural incubator for the eggs. Throughout breeding season, the male has to ensure the temperature inside the mound is maintained at about 33 degrees. The temperature is judged by the male putting his head in the mound, and it is thought that he tests the temperature with his tongue. He then decides to either remove or add sand to the mound according to the temperature within it and its season. In spring, much heat is given off by the rotting leaves and the temperature must be reduced. At dawn, the male digs down near the egg and, after allowing enough heat to escape, he refills the hole with cool sand. In summer, the male needs to protect the egg from the heat of the sun. He adds more sand to the mound, which absorbs the sun's warmth. Then, in the cool morning, he removes the sand and scatters it in the cool air. When the sand has cooled down, he puts it back on the mound. During the falling temperatures of autumn, the mound needs to be kept warm. To do this, the male digs almost all the soil away in the morning, spreading it out in the warm sun. Throughout the hottest part of the day, he places hot layers of sand on the mound so that the sun goes down and the nest can be rebuilt and is still warm for the night. While the male is keeping the temperature of the mound consistent, the female is busy laying eggs and helping with the digging. Generally, an egg is laid every 4 to 8 days. A female malleefowl will lay between 15 to 24 eggs in a season. The number of eggs varies on the availability of food. The malleefowl parents rarely get to see the result of their labour because they abandon the nest when the remaining eggs, when the critical temperature of the mound can no longer be maintained. When the egg hatch, chicks dig upwards and climb out of the mound. This can take up to 15 hours, then they begin a solitary life independent of their parents. The chicks are available to fly within an hour. Many eggs hatch, but very few offspring survive. Relying only on camouflage for defence, malleefowl chicks are easy prey for foxes. The eggs are very large compared to other birds, weighing between 12 to 20% of the female's weight. A very large yolk provides enough protein for the developing embryo during its long incubation. The size and weight of the egg are important because when the chicks hatch, they must be very well developed in order to fend for themselves. There is no input from either parents as they go about their relatively solitary lives. The eggshells are also much thinner than most other bird eggs, allowing air that is trapped inside the mound to enter the egg and supply enough oxygen for the developing chick.
As said before, foxes are just one of the threats of the malleefowl faces. Although they do have the potential to wipe out some of the species, as they both the bird and the eggs. Wholesale baiting and bounty programs are the only way this predator can be eliminated. Another threat is the fragmentation of its habitat integration caused by introduced animals. Perhaps the biggest threat to communities of malleefowl is wildfire, giving even more meaning to the techniques we have spoken about today. Wildfire is capable of wiping out large numbers of malleefowl, and it is evidenced in the Hatter fires where 40 birds were killed. We will end this presentation here, but once again we would like to repeat, the time for action is now. We must act or it will be too late. Thanks to everyone who has assisted us with our research, and thank you for allowing us to have this opportunity to speak.
No worries. Thank you very much, Tyler and Zach, for that really interesting presentation. Now we'll have a few questions. First of all, started by Dan on the stage here.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, that's really wonderful. Part of this program is about identifying or encouraging people to develop love stories with nature, and malleefowls for me are just one of those hero species that have such a complex interaction with their environment and can act as key species or icon species in a habitat to really talk about the health of the habitat. And as you say, clearly fire management is one of the threats to that species. So a really interesting idea. Do we have any questions from the...
Does anyone have any questions from the audience?
How endangered is the malleefowl? Do you see it much in the wild?
In WA, they're listed under threatened. In South Australia, they're under the threatened list. In Victoria, by memory, they're under the critically endangered, and in New South Wales, they're under endangered.
Yeah, seriously threatened. Yep.
Okay, and any other questions?
So your project examined the use of fire, but are there any other conservation actions that you think would benefit from traditional Aboriginal input?
Well, there is the totem of the mallee fowl, but I really don't know a lot about that. We didn't really look into that one.
But it's, as you were saying in the presentation, the use of people who are responsible for animals and fire within the Indigenous Aboriginal community is really a, sort of one way of, an additional way of management, I suppose, having those sorts of ideas. In many other countries of the world, protected areas don't look like they look in Australia. There's very few people live in our protected areas now, but in other parts of the world that's not the case. There's still often lots of people living in those areas, lots of work goes on, people still harvest from those environments. And I guess one of the things that is missing from management of the land here, as Bill Gamage talks about, is people in the country and managing it as it has been done in the past. So what do you think some of the benefits would be of having greater involvement from Indigenous people working with parks or with protected areas to bring back some of those, like fire management and so on? No, I guess it's just talking in terms of having those cultural practices readily being practiced within parks. A lot of the work that's being done is with joint management, which is giving people obviously better access into parks, and once Aboriginal peoples have those established, then their cultural practices can generally be more beneficial to conservation, is the ambition, I suppose. Yep. Any other questions?
Have you ever seen a mallee fowl like in person, like you personally, or?
Yes, I have. I was out near, I can't remember what it's called, Bottle Bend or something? Bottle Bend National Park, and saw one there. Very brief, but still.
Thanks, guys. We look forward to seeing you again at the World Parks Congress in a few weeks and seeing your Inspiring Solution video at that time. Can we have a round of applause, please?
Okay, thanks once again, Tyler and Zach, and you can find out more information on their project on the WPC Fuse website. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.